Okay, so we will talk about seeking energy. So, so you've most probably heard about the concept of seeking from lots of speakers before, and it's talked about a lot in spirituality. So my first introduction to the concept of seeking was when I was practicing Buddhism, but they phrased it slightly differently. They phrased it in the language of craving. So very specific with their words, and they called it craving. And what craving meant was craving to fulfill yourself in pleasure. So craving to find something that will fulfill you in the sensory system. So whether that be food, chocolate, this is a very good one, almost works, especially if it's milk chocolate from Belgium. Whether it be through sex or relationships, money, all types of different things there are out there. Music, religion, spirituality, the intellect. And they call that craving. Our body as mammals is naturally programmed to move towards pleasure. So we move towards eating Belgian chocolate rather than cow dung. So it's not implying that you should riddle yourself with pain and that you should not go for pleasure. We're set up to move towards pleasure. That's love, that's beauty. To move towards pleasure. That's the natural flow of life. That's how God speaks through us, is to move towards pleasurable sensations. Craving, however, is the belief that that pleasurable sensation will one day make you feel like you've arrived home. And this is when evil sets in, when people begin to do evil things, and when people begin to hate themselves, hate their environment, because a desperation is put in play. So it's craving. So craving isn't a movement towards pleasure. It's like a deep craving that your body, your sexuality will fulfill me, that conquering a nation will fulfill me, that having more money than my neighbor will fulfill me. And this is when you will do anything to get it. And why? It's not because the pleasure is so great. Pleasure is nice, but it's not that great. It's that you believe that you'll find what you truly look for in that pleasure. That you'll find love. That's really all that you look for, is love. But that is a very big carrot, to really believe that if you get enough money, you will be loved. This is huge. This is huge. And that you will feel like you're at home. To really believe that game. And you will do anything to find love. You will sell your soul to find love. And if you look at stories, I love stories, and mythology. If you look at stories, a lot of our stories tell us this. So stories are very wise. They're not there for nothing. It's like our ancestors communicating what's happened in the past. And a huge story is about this, is selling our soul to the devil. But we think in the West, because we externalize everything and we make it subject-object, we think the devil is like somebody that lives in the underworld, and we go and we shake their hand and we're like, sign a contract. We're like, here, I will give you this if you give me that. But it's not really somebody you meet. The devil is a part of your being. It's what you do in order to get a pleasure. And we know this. Deep down we know that the devil isn't somebody we meet in the underworld, that it's an internal dynamic that we face. And so the hero's journey always has the moment where the hero or the heroine is offered to work with the devil in order to save the world normally. It's normally an altruistic part that if you sign up with the devil, you will save the world. And he's always, or she is always offered this moment, and there's always this tension. Will they or won't they take it? If they do something bad, like the greater good, if I just sacrifice this, then it will work out for everybody. Like if I kill you now, I will save 100 people in the future. That's the type of situation the hero is faced with in stories. But it's really an internal dynamic. It's what you will do to get love. And all of us have done it. All of us have made a little pact with the devil. Let me think of one that Lisa has done. I've done so many. It's hard to come to mind right now, most probably. Like a pact that I made with the devil. Well, one pact that I know that I made with the devil was giving my body away in order to receive love from another. I'm sure that a lot of women can relate to that, or maybe not, maybe it was only me. But like giving my body away sexually in order to receive love. That was a strong dynamic. I didn't even know I was playing it when I was younger. Like, I just thought that's what women did. You had sex because the other person wanted it and you were meant to want it, but really I didn't want it. And that's terrible to do that to somebody. That's so uncompassionate to have to make love with someone when you don't want to. Not only to yourself, but to the other person in order to get their love. You're conning them. It's a con. That's a pact with the devil, but it's an internal devil. It doesn't work out, does it? If anybody's ever done that, made love because they wanted the attention of the other, or they wanted the other to be happy, it never works out. You'll end up being violently angry with your partner, because when they don't do something for you that you want, rage will come up. I sold my body to you. But you can't think of it like that. You just begin to form a rage. Like, how dare they? The woman's rage. They left their underwear on the floor. But it's really not about that. It's about the prior actions that you've done in order to get their love. And now they leave their underwear on the floor with skid marks. So we see these stories everywhere. We know these stories. They're deeply embedded in our psyche of what it is to sell our soul to the devil. And Craving from Buddhism, like, defines it so well, just that word in English, craving. Not seeking, craving. It's like a craving to be full. Another image that they have in Buddhism that I liked, and sorry if anyone is a practicing Buddhist if I'm bastardizing or making things up. Sometimes, there's a lot of practice, but sometimes I forget things and my imagination is very vivid. And so I then make it up and I'm not sure, I can't even remember that I've made it up. But I try my best to stick to what the Buddhists tell me, or told me. So another one was an image that they had was hungry ghosts. So this image, they used to have lots of images. So when you went into certain Buddhist temples, you used to see these images on the wall. And we all know these stories. We knew them since birth. It's genetically bred into us. And they had this image of these ghosts, they called them, which had tiny, tiny little mouths. These little tiny mouths and these huge stomachs. These big bellies. And these ghosts were so hungry, but they couldn't eat enough food because their mouth was so small. So tiny little throats, tiny little mouths and huge bellies. And no matter how much they ate, they couldn't fill themselves, and they had to go very slowly because their mouth was so small. And that's just such a beautiful image. And so the Buddhists would say it's different realms, but to me, the way I felt it was like different states of being. Like that was something that you like had during your life. Or certain people, you could see some people were more prone to that. Like they were starving, hungry, but they couldn't fulfill themselves. They couldn't eat enough food. So in non-duality, the way I was taught it as a word called seeking, the seeker. I was also taught it as the illusory self. And I'm a bit of a tart with words. So in England, a tart means you can either have a jam tart, so it's like something you eat. It's like this pastry thing with jam in it. It's very tasty, lots of sugar. Or you can have a tart, which is somebody that sleeps with lots of gentlemen or sleeps with lots of women. So I say that I'm a tart with words sometimes, as in like I jump around from different terminologies and different ways of phrasing it. I listened to many different speakers and was influenced by many different cultures and philosophies. And so you'll hear me jumping around. I don't stick to anything for too long. I'm also a triple Gemini, and Gemini are known for being fickle, like they move a lot. So dependent on the day that you see me would be dependent on the way that I'm speaking about it. And this is what I love about non-duality, is that there is no dogma, there is no right way of speaking about it. So you can't be like, but yesterday you said this, because there's no fixed dogma to non-duality. It's not concept, it's not a religion, it's not something we can all sit here and believe in. It's a way. It's like beyond our mind and beyond our stories. So in non-duality, the way I was taught it was seeking, or this illusory self. So if I go from seeking, the way that they taught it in seeking was that that when you separated from life, when you became an individual entity, when you divided from everything that was, there was a part of you that was missing, like you lost something. Because you felt separate, you felt divided from everything, you felt incomplete. And then a seeking dynamic formed. They also called it like a separate self, like an illusory self. And this seeking dynamic is always looking for happiness in time. You're always looking for something that will complete you in time, that one day you will arrive at that something. And what it does is it encourages a storyteller in your mind, this story of your life. And if you really examine your thinking mind, a lot of your thinking mind is about completing you in time, or seeking for something in time. You might not be aware of it, because maybe your mind is in a lot of like negative thinking. But if you really analyze it, you'll realize that there's a part of you that feels incomplete, and you feel that the external world isn't delivering you that thing. So maybe if you went to the coffee shop and they produced a bad coffee for you, or they were rude to you, your mind might get stuck on moaning about them for hours. And what your mind's trying to do is your mind is trying to bring you back to balance, but it's telling you stories of what they've done to you. And what happens internally is their behavior made you feel incomplete, and you're trying to find completion in a version of your story. You're trying to resolve your feeling of incompleteness, your feeling of feeling small to them, or insignificant, or unloved. And so you're trying to find a version where you feel good enough, where you feel loved. So it activates a thinking mind. And what we do in the West is we have a very strong thinking mind, a very strong, if we call it like a horizontal mind, thinking in past and future. So if we call this moment the vertical, this moment is a vertical line that's just here right now. And in the West, we encourage this thinking mind that goes into horizontal time that's always in past and future. So your mind is always thinking about what has happened or what is going to happen to you. And you'll notice that you can't think about the now. You can't think about the vertical line of what is. What you can think about is past or future. It's a time. You can also begin to see that who you think you are is a time-bound entity. And what non-duality points to, and what Buddhism also points to, is who you are is actually the vertical. Who you truly are is this moment, is what's happening. And what you've become convinced you are, which is a lie, which is a waking dream, is a story in time. And these talks, and Buddhism, and non-duality, and most probably all religions are trying to point you back to a truth that's beyond thinking. It's divine. And it's something that every being and everything has as its birthright. It's something you were born with, it's something that you know intuitively, but it's beyond thinking. It's not something you find in time. So Ramesh Balsekar, a teacher I used to go and visit in Mumbai, he always used to say it's every being's birthright. Who you are is every being's birthright. Right. And he used to also say that humans have lost their connection to God by buying into this horizontal timeline, by always believing you are an action, you are something that's happened. So if we go now more into this non-duality teaching, so you can begin to ask yourself, who are you? So that's what they're really into in non-duality. So Ramana Maharshi is famous for the question, who are you? And he developed a whole practice of like meditating on this question of who are you? Like keep asking, who are you? Who are you? So if we go into this, who are you right now? Who are you? Who is sitting here looking at me? So the seeking mind tells you that you're an action. It says, I am something that came before. So maybe a lot of you think that you are somebody that was sitting in a cafe and you walked up the stairs and you sat down in this room and you're sitting listening to me talk. And it might sound very abstract to hear that that's not true. That's not who you are. But this is something that your society, your culture, your thinking, your intellect has taught you, that you are somebody sitting, listening to Lisa. But what if you weren't? What if that wasn't who you are? What if that was an illusion? So if you look at it now, that idea that you were sitting in a cafe and you came up here and you sat down is actually a thought. It's not actually what's happening, it's a thought that comes with a feeling in the body. It's not a reality. So what is the reality right now? Mine's like, well, the reality is that I'm sitting on a cushion and my back is sore. Mine actually isn't, I'm just imagining what you're thinking. After so many years of Buddhist practice, you get used to sitting in the slumped position. The Buddhists they didn't let you sit against the wall. The non-duality people are very lazy. They let you sit against the wall. The Buddhists weren't. But yeah, so maybe you're thinking, I'm sitting here and I'm uncomfortable, or I need the toilet, or I'm feeling very sleepy. Whatever it is that you're thinking, you think that person is sitting there. But let's just look at that. So there is thoughts appearing telling you that that's who you are. So that's thoughts. What if you weren't a thought? What if you took out any thought or belief system that you had about yourself? What's left if you took that out? And one's like, let me think about that. What thought could you come up with? Well, I'm white. I'm from the UK. I am a young person or an old person. But isn't that a thought? So, okay, so we just put that aside. We'll come back to that. There's nothing wrong with thinking. We're not saying that thinking is bad. Thinking is amazing. I love thinking. But if we just put that aside, so what's left if we put that aside? So what about if you say, okay, I'm my body. But how do you know that without thinking? How do you know that you're a body sitting here without thinking? There's something so spectacular that's really beautiful that I'm pointing to. The mind, the thinking might be like, oh God, this is boring, I'm a thought, fuck off. Actually, there's something really special actually happening if you're willing to investigate this. Like it's really like when this is seen, it's really one of those moments where you're like, oh my God. So if we just put aside the thought that you're a body, who is sitting here? And this is non-duality. So what I'm doing now is non-duality. So what non-duality means is not two-ness. So this pointing is pointing to not two-ness. This is how it is known experientially, not intellectually, experientially, that this isn't a divided reality. When this is seen, this really proves, without a doubt, but not intellectually, not as a scientific experiment, something that's known in the heart of being, that this is not a divided reality. So, okay, so if we go again to this body thing, so if you're sitting here thinking that you're a body looking at me, or your eyes looking at me, how do you know that right now? You know what you might realise is what your mind is doing is your mind is producing an image of you. So if you just let that image go, who is looking at me? So then there's a thought that there is an entity or a soul. So again, that's something you've been taught. That's a thought, so just let that go. Who is looking at me? What else could there be? What else could the mind come up with? I remember when I first did this, I was very fortunate in the Buddhist group that very quickly I met somebody that was really into non-duality in the Buddhist group. I loved the Buddhist group, but I also love non-duality, so I'm happy that I was open to that as well. And I didn't get stuck on Buddhism. And so very quickly I met this gentleman who was into non-duality, and he used to point his finger at me, and he used to go, who is the finger pointing at? And he'd sit there for ages, like pointing his finger, like, if you're in the camera, like. And I would be like, me. It's pointing at me. And I always thought it was stupid, like he was stupid, like it was a stupid exercise. But it's actually really profound if you're willing to explore this. Who is the finger pointing at? Me. I'd be like, me. Who is this me? What can begin to happen is a separation between the thinking mind and the feelings, and there's something else that's experiencing. So in non-duality, they would call it consciousness. In Buddhism, they'd call it consciousness too. And then they would eventually go further than consciousness, and they would say mystery. But we're going to stay with consciousness today. So they'd say there is this consciousness. And this consciousness is not bound by anything. It has no limitations on it. And this consciousness is conscious of thinking, it's conscious of the feeling, it's conscious of the emotions, and it's conscious of the body. And what happens is that, I just have to put this in between my leg. So what happens is that the thinking mind and consciousness and the body begin to like hold on to each other, and it feels inside of you that you are conscious as a person, but actually this consciousness is prior to the person, and that you as a person aren't actually alive. I know that sounds really weird, but it's really wonderful that you aren't actually alive, that you're an appearance that's happening. And that your suffering has evolved from believing that who you are is a person moving in time. And actually who you are is this consciousness that's beyond the person. And this consciousness is not limited. Your suffering comes from believing you're a limitation. This consciousness is everywhere. Everything is consciousness. It is unlimited. It is unbound. It's only present here. It's not stuck in time. It didn't come from the past. It's right here, and it's everything's birthright. Everything. And this isn't intellectual. This is experiential. So this isn't something I'm teaching you in time. Like, I know it sounds like I'm teaching you in time, and there's one part that's teaching you in time and helping you in the time, helping the person in the timeline to relax. But then there's something that's teaching you beyond time. It's teaching you about something that's here, that's really miraculous and special. And this isn't something you can buy. This isn't something that you can sell your soul for, even though you've been trying in the human world to sell yourself for it. You've been trying your best. You've been like, I'll give you a bit of this if you give me a bit of that. And it never worked. You kept getting more and more desperate. This is something that's just here. And it's yours, all yours. But not yours as a person. So let's look at this consciousness. So it might be like the mind, the thinking mind is like, what's she talking about? And it's trying to find something. But this is beyond the thinking mind. So let's look at consciousness. So, like, respect to anybody that's listening to this in their second language. Like, I really respect that. I'm currently learning French, and I'm still just can't get into different tenses. I mean, like, I'm still just in the one tense. Like, I can't. So listening to this, apparently in French they don't have the word consciousness. I might be wrong, but apparently that doesn't really translate, or awareness. It does. Laurent, who used to translate my talks, always used to say it doesn't quite work, the word consciousness. Sorry? Oh, consciousness is awareness that doesn't exist. Okay. So I'm going to try and talk about awareness and consciousness. So in English, we have lots of different ways of calling consciousness and awareness. Okay. So we could say something like, I was unconscious that I was being rude to you. So it's like I'm getting annoyed, but I'm not conscious of it. So in spirituality, we talk a lot about coming more conscious of ourselves. Like, so it's like, you know, we're being passive aggressive, but we're unconscious of it. And it's part of spirituality, and I would really recommend doing this, is becoming more conscious of the personality structure. That's not the consciousness I'm talking about. It's really confusing. I don't know why we mixed up all our words, but we did. That's not the consciousness I'm talking about. However, becoming more conscious of your person is super important. It's super important. I'm still doing that. I'm still becoming more conscious of Lisa. Like, I'm still trying to work on Lisa becoming a nicer person, a more integrated person, a more balanced person. Like, not playing passive-aggressive games or anything like that, trying to be as upfront as she can be and as giving as she can be. And I see that as an endless thing, that we never arrive at becoming a perfect person. Although it's a nice ideal, we never actually arrive at it. And if we do believe we do, that's part of us being unconscious. Like, if we think, okay, I'm going to become a perfect person one day, that's an unconscious dynamic. Because becoming a perfect person is normally about becoming a powerful person. Because if you're perfect, you're always right. If you're imperfect, then you have to admit that you're not always right. So it's normally an unconscious dynamic. And all of us are aspiring, hopefully, to become more integrated and open, expansive, and more conscious on the human level. But I'm not using consciousness in that way. There is another thing that we've got, and that is personal awareness. And that's not what I'm talking about either. Now let me just tell you of what I mean by personal awareness. Personal awareness to me is when you move your focus. So personal awareness is when you put your attention on your heartbeat or your breathing. So in Buddhism, they used to recommend practices of doing this. So they used to do this for hours and hours, where you put your personal awareness on the tip of your nose, and then you follow the breath in and down, and then you counted to 1, and then you did it again. 2, and then at 10, you had to start again. But because you'd go into automatic mode, you'd normally end up at 100, and then you're like, oh shit, forgot. And then you have to go back to 1 again. And the goal is just to do it to 1, and you just stay, really, they called it being present. And this again isn't what I'm talking about when I talk about consciousness. But I'm just going to explain this. So we got this personal awareness. Now this is really healthy to do on the human level, because often what we've done is our personal awareness is too much in the thinking mind, in the third eye. We're too much in thinking about the past and the future. So doing this is very healthy, to put our attention in a different place. Another thing that they would recommend is putting your attention in the sole of your feet and imagining like roots going into the ground. Another thing we did was putting attention on the different chakras, getting to know the chakras, putting it in your body, and all of this was super healthy, and I'm so glad I did it all, and I still do it all. I still do these things on the personal awareness level. So we have this personal awareness, which I call the movement of the lens. It's the movement of focus. So if you imagine it like a camera, we're moving the focus of attention. Okay? So we can also move the focus externally, and we can put it on the sound of the crows or the magpies or the birds, the trees. We can put it on a site, or we can put it on another person. And this is the movement of the personal awareness. And that's not consciousness of the big consciousness that I was talking about. The big consciousness is aware and conscious of all of that happening. And it is an effort. So moving your attention is effort. Becoming conscious of the personality structure is effort. It's something you do in the flow of life. It's something that's an action, like picking fruit or going to work. It's an action that you do. But there is something that's conscious of that. There's something that knows all that. So you could call all of that like watching a film. Like, so say if you're in a cinema, you're watching a film. You're watching somebody put the attention on the nose and breathe in. You're watching somebody become more conscious of their personality structure, and the film is moving by. But there's something that knows all of this and is a birthright. When you wake up in the morning, you don't ask to be conscious. Consciousness appears. When you were born as a baby, you didn't ask to be conscious, it appeared. Right now, consciousness is happening without any effort, and it's everywhere and it's everything. So when you're listening to me talk, your personal awareness is focused on the words, your brain is interpreting it, and your personal awareness is focusing on my body, most probably, this body. But consciousness is also conscious of the bamboo screen behind me. It's also conscious of the colours, and it knows it, but it also doesn't know it intellectually. It knows it innocently. It's so innocent, it knows. So right now, there is consciousness of you focusing on me. There's consciousness of the birds. There's consciousness of the colours. There's consciousness of everything, but it's nobody's action. The consciousness knows the person. What's happened is that the consciousness and the person have got so intermeshed that that truth has been forgotten and overlaid. And this consciousness is free, and this consciousness is everywhere. This consciousness doesn't end at the edge of your face. This consciousness is in the trees, it's in the sound. The consciousness isn't subject and object, so there isn't a consciousness that's conscious of something. The consciousness is everything. It's your thinking mind that makes it feel that consciousness is happening inside of your head. So right now, your thinking mind says, I end here, and Lisa, there is space, And Lisa begins out there. That's your thinking mind. Your actual experience is that there is consciousness. And this consciousness is instantaneous. There's nothing outside of consciousness. That's the actual experience, and that's what's been forgotten by identification with thinking. Thinking makes it feel like there's time and space, that you are a separate entity that's in relationship to life. And this is what creates seeking and craving and suffering, because you forget the wholeness part of you. You're whole and you're complete right now, as you are. It's divine. It's heavenly. It's overlooked. Seeking in time makes you feel incomplete. So I'm going to give one more metaphor, one that I like, because I'm into the computers and the AI. I know there's people here that don't like it, but both my parents were computer programmers. My partner is a computer programmer, and all childhood I hated computers, but then I fell in love with them again. I have a feeling it was because my parents liked them. I was like, But now I really love the computer. I think it's amazing. So I'm going to give us a sci-fi metaphor, okay? And then you can ask questions, and you can, by asking questions, you help the group see where I need to be more clear, or I need to give more clarity. So it's great that you ask questions. So this is one last metaphor. So a couple of years ago in Berlin, I did something that was so cool. And if you ever get the opportunity to do this isn't a paid advertisement, by the way. I should get paid for it, but I don't. This is going to go on YouTube, so I don't get paid for this. This isn't one of those in-app payments or in YouTube video payments. But I did this game. So you went into this like a big building, and you put a backpack on, and then you put these goggles on. And then you stood in a room by yourself, and your friend, who you went with, stood in the other room. And when you put the goggles on, you entered a virtual world. And then you had to pick your character. And I get a little bit of motion sickness, so I got sick, and I by accidentally picked a cow. And I ended up being a cow the whole game. If I was more aware, I would have picked a dog. I like dogs, and I feel kindred spirits with the dog but I ended up a cow. So I'm my virtual world. I was a cow. So Lisa was looking through these goggles, and she was in a dark factory room. But in her world, she was in like the future, and she was on a spaceship being a cow. And her friend picked a fox. So her friend was a fox, and she was a cow with a space suit on, I think, and was in a future reality. And you had to go through this world and fix all the puzzles. Because you had to fix things, and it was so amazing. So they were so intelligent, this game, that I never banged into the wall in my room that I was in. It was programmed with the wall. So it moved me, and it made me feel like I could walk inside this virtual reality. So I was walking around, like you walked around and you moved, and every movement was happening in your virtual world. I was like, and I never had to worry about banging into walls. Lisa didn't have to worry about the walls. It all matched up. The computer made me never walk into a wall. It always made me safe. So what began to happen, at first I was very conscious of the walls. So in my virtual reality I couldn't see the old room. I couldn't see the factory room I was in. All I could see was this spaceship, was this futuristic world, and my cow hands and my fox friend. And I forgot that I was in a factory in Berlin after time, and I became super involved in this world because they gave me obstacles that I had to complete, and that you had time, and it was like if you didn't complete it, the whole world was going to be blown up and destroyed. So you had to complete these tasks, and I began to become very free. So I was running, and I completely forgot that there could be a wall that I ran into. I was running, I was moving, and I wasn't thinking anymore about Berlin and the factory room and what I looked like in Lisa's world. I was totally involved in being a cow in my future world. And it was very exciting. It was really, really cool. And in this world, I was concerned about falling over the edge. I was concerned about shutting the door behind me and making sure I got into the lift, and I didn't break the walls of this virtual reality. Like maybe somebody more smart than me would have tried to jump off the edge, but I stayed within the boundaries. Like I just played in this world. I didn't try and jump off the edge or break through the lift door or anything like that or kill my partner. I just fitted in with the rules in this virtual reality, and it was so much fun. And we had to run around this world, and the more and more time I spent in this world, the more I invested in this world, the more I got involved, and I forgot about Lisa. And I forgot about what Lisa had to do that day or what was coming up. I was just concerned about my cow and being a cow. And it was really fun, and I loved it. And then eventually we succeeded, and apparently we did very well. I don't think it was down to me, it was down to my fox friend that was very good at these games, but I jumped on board and we did very well, and we got a certificate afterwards. But, and that lasted for half an hour. Imagine if that lasted for like 500 years. Would I still remember Lisa? Would I remember that I was Lisa looking through these goggles? Or would I be totally involved in being a cow? And what would my cow look like if I, or not look like, but be like if I got totally lost in being a cow? Like, I abided by the rules. I don't know why I did, and why I didn't go and kill myself, but I abided by the rules, even though I knew it wasn't real. I fitted in and did it. But what would have happened to my cow character if I really began to believe my cow and that world was real, and that I was born a cow and would die a cow, and I totally forgot about Lisa and this bigger perspective? What would begin to happen to my cow character? What would form? You can imagine at first the cow, like a child, would have this childlike innocence. It would be all full of wonder. It would be like really excited, like woohoo! And it would really enjoy being alive, and it would be like woohoo, like opening the door would be miraculous, shutting the door would be miraculous. You can imagine in the beginning, simplicity would be enough. Like that would just be really exciting, a bit like what my dog is like. My dog is very into simplicity. Opening and shutting the door is very exciting to my dog. Going near the food cupboard is excited. My dog is a little spoilt. She sometimes gets liver pate. Buying liver pate in the supermarket, she knows what I bought. I buy it, she's tied up outside. I come out and she is very excited. The very simple things are excited. Getting out the lead is very exciting for her. She's super excited to be alive in everything. So let's go back to my cow character. At first, that's what would happen. But what would happen to my cow character after like 10, 20, 30 years? I suspect what would happen is the cow character would begin to forget that it was Lisa, and it would begin to take the dream very seriously. And the more seriously it took the dream, the less risks it took, and the more it began to rely on the thinking mind. Like, this is safe, and beginning to identify with what happened in time. And I would suspect that the cow stopped being its playful, youthful self, and it started investing in the story, and investing in the cow life, what it had done, where it had been, and getting more and more involved. And eventually I suspect what would happen is I'd completely forget about Lisa, and I would just be totally involved in being a cow, and I would be cut off from a wonder, from a mystery. And this is what happens in this life. There is something that's experiencing your character. There is something that's experiencing this, and it's been forgotten. And the best way I can say it is consciousness. So if you imagine this AI explanation, there is something looking through these goggles, and what's happened is you totally believe you're the character inside the dream, but there's something that's experiencing this dream, which is really magical and special and innocent. And it's everything's birthright, because there's consciousness, right? There's consciousness happening. It's everything's birthright, and it's here right now. but you only ever find it here. You don't find it in time, and you don't find it in the dream. So my cow character in the virtual reality will never find it in the virtual reality. If I completely forgot myself in that reality, I would only remember it here. I would only wake up here, in this moment. I wouldn't wake up in the cow's reality. But okay, so that's enough of me speaking and doing all the metaphors. So now you can ask any questions and we can talk about two different things. I can help you in the dream. So in your cow dream, but it's a human dream, in your human dream that's going in time, I can give you advice and I can give you tips in how to relax the person, the cow, the person, the character. And then I can also point to something that's beyond the cow character, that's happening right here, right now. And I'm open for doing both. So you can either ask about problems in the dream, or you can ask about something that cannot be asked about. So you have to take a microphone though.